Hi, everyone. I am not Wayne. In some disguise, you picked up from Canal Street. Wayne has the rest of his voice, so I am Ian Donovan. I am a data scientist at Statespace, and I come from a similar world of neuroscience. And that's what we do at Statespace is leveraging neuroscience to improve analytics and training for esports. So, great, up and running. I'm sure a lot of us, to people who are friends of ours who don't work in gaming, may do a bit of bragging about how exciting it is to work in this space, how much it's growing, and how much, in a lot of ways, we have surpassed traditional sports in terms of, say, viewership, engagement from a younger generation, and all sorts of innovation. But it's also important to realize how we have a lot of room to grow and a lot of catching up to do when it comes to, compared to traditional sports. So here's a quote that kind of encapsulates that from Steve Aronset, CEO of Team Liquid. When discussing the difficulties in identifying top players and building teams, his quote is, "It's not like they're at some kind of combine where it can measure all their statistics." So encapsulated in this quote is something really important, the fact that there are no standardized fundamental benchmarks for esports performance. There's a lot of strategies and perspectives that people have and techniques that the teams and coaches use, but there's no standard benchmarks like there is in traditional sports. So in traditional sports, individual sports have combines where players can get objective measures of certain fundamental skills that are important to success in that sport. For example, the 40-yard dash in football. And this data is crucial for recruitment and also for correlating what individual skills are important for the success of individual players and teams. Additionally, traditional sports have decades of iteration and data and analysis on what training practices work best and which don't work at all. And importantly, gaming has neither. So we don't have these fundamental benchmarks of individual skills that contribute to a player's ability and success. And we don't have enough data on what training is best. And furthermore, how much training is too much, what's the optimal amount of training beyond which performance no longer improves and is not helped, or even when burnout occurs. So these two areas are really glaring places where we need to have standardized and fundamental benchmarks for us all to operate on. But given this problem, the next question is, well, what should these benchmarks be? How do we determine what individual skills should be considered these fundamentals? So at Statespace, our perspective, both Wayne and I come from the world of neuroscience, and looking through that lens, where the question in neuroscience is, how does the brain work? Over decades and decades of research and people coming from perspectives of analyzing individual cells or larger brain areas or even questions of the mind and consciousness, through these very varied perspectives, these different scientists in different labs in very different contexts have had to develop and hone objective measures of performance in different kinds of tasks that probe different functions. And these techniques need to be able to be replicated and compared across individuals and across different settings. So it just so happens that Wayne's insight in founding our company is that these techniques and approaches are readily applied to gaming. So Wayne's insight was to just think of esports performance or gaming performance as just a particular case of a cognitive, motor, perceptual task. And all these come to bear in performance in esports. So an example of one of these tasks would be an eye movement task where you'd be asked to fixate on the center of a screen and then move your eyes to a target, this blue circle, to whenever it appears. So in general, your first movement to the target may miss slightly, and you might have to make a corrective movement. And over many attempts, there's just going to be some random variability. So you're going to get near the target, but you're never going to make the exact movement every time. And we can just looking at this simple example, we can see we can get a lot of information by looking at multiple attempts where there is a spread, so there's a degree of variability in where you land. There's also the kind of the mean landing position is like maybe down to the right, so this indicates a certain bias. Overall, we can and note that across different locations, you may have different biases, different abilities. You may be faster at some locations and not at others. And with these standardized simple tasks, they can also be tweaked to look at different functions. For example, if the target is moving, then that would probe your ability to track the visual motion and actually predict where things are appearing, or maybe multiple targets appear and distract you. So we can probe cognitive and perceptual factors that affect your performance. An example of what is borne out from this data is the retinal performance field. So for example, where a target appears on your retina actually is greatly affected by where it appears. So even if it's the same distance from the center, where your vision is the best, it also matters where it appears. So you're actually really bad at detecting things right above your center of gaze compared to along the horizontal. And so here I'm showing a performance just with these bar graphs here and in a different way in this radial chart on the left. But just the point is that we might not have any awareness of it, but our ability to see is actually greatly affected by where something hits our retina. And in addition to this general pattern, individuals have even more complex and unique maps you can think of these as maps of their ability. And we can't get any of this information. This is information that has been built through many, many studies across different labs and investigators. And this would be impossible to find this information out if we don't have standard measurements of performance. So at Statespace, we've designed and built a platform that is a first-person shooter aim trainer, but under the hood, we are analyzing everything the player is doing in these various tasks, analyzing that data, and then adapting the game to fit their particular needs. So where are they suffering the most, whether that is in certain kinds of abilities like speed and accuracy or tracking versus flicking, and also even things like where on the screen their performance is worse. And in doing this, our goal is to, in large part, to verify what are some fundamental skills, kind of like the equivalents or analogs to what goes on in traditional sports, like how fast you can run, how high you can jump, and how strong you are, but just the gaming versions of those. So first I'm going to talk about the analytics, and then talk about the adaptive AI, and then additionally some future directions we think are really important too. So one example of a task we have, this is a video of someone playing spider shot, where a target will appear in the middle, and then at a random location outside of the middle, and then just back and forth. So this is, it can be actually seen as similar to the eye movement task I was describing before, where you can see it sometimes there's an overshoot and they have to correct, etc. But at the end of play, we can provide players with some basic measures of performance. So here we have accuracy, and we have reaction time, the number of targets, the kills total. And these shaded regions kind of give them an idea of where they performed really well. In this case, they did really well in accuracy and worse in reaction time. We also can provide them with information like the actual objective measure of their reaction time in milliseconds, their median reaction time, and also tracking their performance over time. We can tell them how well they did in this round compared to more recent rounds. We can even get even more granular than that and show their performance over time, this is over across 100 plays, and even at different locations, et cetera. And all this information is information that they don't have any access to by just playing themselves. They might have an idea that they may feel slow, or maybe they missed a certain, they were less accurate than they normally are, but actually providing them with the data is actually really useful to them, and they keep coming back. We actually have a huge data set. We surpassed over 1 million users. So this is actually a great tool for science beyond being a fun and engaging training tool. Additionally, we can also show them, this represents the screen, and these light green colors indicate better performance, and the dark blue indicates worse performance. This individual shows that in this round they were worse on the left than they were on the right. Again, they might not have any idea that they have this kind of relative deficit. And beyond just accuracy and reaction time, or how long it takes you to hit a target, et cetera, there's actually a wealth of information we can get if we look at, for example, their mouse movement data. So here we have the X and Y position on the screen, X and Y axes, and these diamonds indicate the target location, and these dotted lines indicate their mouse trajectory sampled at 60 hertz. So the most efficient movement you would make would be a straight line, obviously. That was the quickest way you can get to the target. But we see here that none of these are straight lines. Some of them are close to straight lines. Additionally, some of them overshoot the target or stop short or just have a really bow shape. And the complexities of these specific, individual movements really show us that there's a wealth of information to be gained if we look at the data the right way. So here I'm plotting this data in a different way, splitting up the horizontal and the vertical components of the movement, and with time on the x-axis. And with these dotted lines indicating the actual target itself. So here we see the cursor position has this kind of stereotypical shape where it kind of ramps up and in an S shape approaches the target, and eventually the player shoots the target. So here, just looking at one of these isolated here, we show this really stereotypical movement where this is something that has long been studied in motor behavior in neuroscience. So whether that's reaching or eye movements, this is very, very typical, where you have a big movement that gets almost all the way to the target, and then you have to make a correction, this small little S shape. And this single curve, from just one trial, gives a lot of information about performance. So if we break it down even further, we can get a lot of information by just looking at individual aspects of this movement. So here, this amplitudes, so how high this is relative to the target, it gives an indication of accuracy. So how close does that first big movement that gets basically 90% of the way to the target, how close that is to the target gives us an idea of how accurate their first movement is. The horizontal position of this on the x-axis tells us the reaction time. So if this middle point of this S-curve was closer to the left, that means they were much faster. So again, here, important thing to indicate, especially for reaction time, is at first, when the target first appears, it takes a while for the brain to process that a target appears and for the person to start moving. And this point tells us gives an indication of how long it took for them to actually start moving to the target. Separate from that, we have speed. So reaction time distinct from speed. Speed being this line that is a tangent, lying right at the same inflection point. If this slope tells us how fast the actual movement itself was. So once they start moving, how fast are they actually moving? And you can imagine each of these contributing to performance. Amplitude, how close you're getting to the target, how quickly you start moving, and how quickly your movement actually is. This is taking these complex movements and breaking them down into these three fundamental features that are actually very simple when you think about it. Just this slope, that's just time over location, it can be very informative of fundamental skills. And looking at the time between when a target appeared and when it hits obscures the distinction between, say, reaction time and speed. So both of those things are going to affect how fast it takes you to hit the target. But if you may suffer in one and not the other. You may be very, very fast at moving, but you might not react as quickly as you could. Another aspect that another important fact that we learned from the neuroscience literature is these, and is common knowledge now to a lot of gamers as well, is that there's a trade-off between speed and accuracy. So you can be very, very fast, but also sacrifice accuracy, and vice versa. And this kind of analysis can weed out that information. Additionally, it doesn't, looking at accuracy itself or reaction time itself and saying, well, you're slow or you're inaccurate, and you need to improve there, this can tell us exactly how you can improve. So whereas in the case of amplitude, if the first amplitude was actually hit the target, you get to the target in almost half the time. So. And additionally, you could imagine an amplitude that goes past the target. So overshooting is a very different kind of error than undershooting, and this kind of analysis is diagnostic of a wide range of deficits beyond just being too slow or too inaccurate. So now that I've talked a little bit about the analytics, I'm going to now talk about some of the adaptive AI and ways that our platform automatically adapts to the performance for individuals. So we have a wide range of tasks, not just this flicking shot like spider shot. We also have tracking tasks and tasks that probe memory and decision making. And our platform will automatically recommend certain tasks for individuals based on their past performance and things that maybe they should be playing more to improve their performance or to just get an assessment of where they're at. Additionally, I talked about this graph where we have the performance as a function of location. So on the left, they're better on the left, indicated by the green, than on the right, indicated by the dark blue. But our platform will actually adapt and start giving them more targets at locations in which they're worse. For example, in this case, on the right side of the screen primarily. What's also important is, well, on the one hand, variability and having the opportunity for players to play a wide variety of different tasks and be recommended and shaping the game to where they need most improvement. Variability is very important for learning and for training for cognition and perception, but also in traditional sports. But it's also important that we can replicate the context of the games you actually want to improve in. So giving players control over mouse sensitivity and field of view, et cetera, means that we can replicate the look and feel of the games they're actually wanting to improve in, and actually, in addition to manually adjusting things, we also try to replicate the settings that are currently used in some of the most popular games. So because if you have the wrong mouse settings, you can imagine it would be like trying to play basketball with a bowling ball. It's not, the settings are completely off, and it's like, the gravity is different. Finally, given as we're building this platform to help players get an idea of their own skills and get an idea of what training it works best, using this as we've used neuroscience to leverage and improve a training platform. We can also as we build this tool for measuring performance, we also can look beyond esports. So early this year, we were proud to collaborate with the NFL Hall of Fame, where we used some of the tasks that probe cognitive abilities and perceptual abilities in AIM Lab to test Hall of Famers and members of their family as well. And we're really excited about the opportunity to use this tool we developed for gamers, but knowing that we can also use it to measure in a fun and engaging way different aspects of cognition. And beyond this, we also have our eyes on parts of early collaborations with Dave Petrino, who's here, with rehabilitation for motor deficits in people who suffered from stroke. For example, where they have impaired motor damage, but having a fun and engaging training platform is worlds beyond what they're given in a typical therapy. So that's very exciting for us as well. And in addition to, while our perspective is very informed by our experience in neuroscience and acknowledging that, and being aware that we have so much to learn from existing science and is a great foundation, we also want to keep in mind that there are many people out there, many of whom are here today, who have had success with training and assessing performance, and we are happy to collaborate with several influencers and opinion leaders on what has been working for them and their perspective as well. So both our community and also particular important individuals. It's really important to keep an eye not only on what's gone in the past in science, but also what people are currently doing now in the world of gaming. So, yep, thanks. Sure. I think we have a few minutes. I don't want to keep anyone from lunch, but if anyone has any questions, sure.
Yeah, so I have a question about like Statespace and using the analytics software. Is there any plans to develop this outside the pro gaming or in either esports or football, and maybe develop it to companies offering accessibility peripherals or accessibility programming to people with disabilities, and seeing like, this is how you perform prior to using your accessibility software or anything, this is how you perform now using it, so we can tell that how much it's improved, how much it helps people, or to video game companies or developers to say, just like you said earlier, where we don't really look up very much, to say, when you develop this game, maybe put the button, the trigger, whatever you need to get to the next level, to the left or right instead of up or down.
Yep. Yeah, great question. So yeah, so I referred a little bit briefly at the end to collaborations we have with David Petrino's lab at Mount Sinai, where we're dealing with people who have severe motor deficits, but and we definitely have our eye on that. And exactly, this tool it can be a diagnostic tool, not just with applications beyond just gamers. So having different input devices, we're our engineering team is very adept at making these things work. There's some things like Xbox has an adaptive controller where you can plug in different peripherals or have different larger buttons, etc. And yeah, absolutely. So if there's on the one end, there's we could have a very controlled kind of therapy, which we're trying to build with our collaboration, but also individuals are free to play around and hopefully we really pride ourselves in being accommodating to different peripherals, etc. So yeah, I'm really excited about that possibility too. Yeah.
How often do you guys revisit with pro players after you've seen the data that you collected? Like, is it 4 times a year or once a month to revisit to see if they're making progression or not?
As far as dealing with individual players, we don't necessarily go and meet with them particularly. I mean, right now primarily it's where people can have an idea of their own data, etc. So we have what we have with what I previewed at the end with Valky and King George and others is more developing tasks that they think would be really useful for people to train on. But as far as assessing your own performance, right now it's just people assessing their own performance, and having some AI that automatically suggests and tweaks things for them. Yeah.
Quick presentation about all the components of performance. Are there any studies that tie that to the actual training or stuff?
Yeah, so that's a huge question because that is a larger goal. But honestly, this, especially when it comes to gaming, this is all kind of in its infancy, to be honest, compared to broader neuroscience. So in my opinion, there's a lot of work that needs to be done there. We know that we can track performance and improvement in our game with individuals, but I can't say that proves it. It's harder to apply that to success in competition, say, given we only have access to our data on our platform. So, yeah.
It looks like this is adapted to built for first-person shooters.
Yes.
Can this work on a Xbox, or can this work on PS4, or different games, or even mobile?
Currently it's just on PC, but we are hoping to, in the near future, to have it on many platforms, mobile, Xbox, etc. So, yeah.
And other game styles like League of Legends?
Oh yeah, different genres. Yeah. So right now this is AIMLab is just for first-person shooters, but yeah, long term it's very important to have something analogs to this for a MOBA, et cetera. So and but each game comes with a different set of problems. This was a sensible place to start because there are so many analogs to typical things that are done in neuroscience, like having a target you're moving to, et cetera. But when you think of something like a MOBA, you have the variability in the hitboxes and different skills of different characters is far more variable. So it's a different thing to tackle. But this is more of our starting place as a company. Yeah.
We've been taking neurological data from like gamers, professional gamers at the highest levels to find out how their minds operate data differently from somebody who's just a casual player.
We would love to do that. And I think we have plans to do it, but we haven't yet. Yeah. Yeah, that would be really, really cool. Yeah, yeah, because there's obviously, I mean, like anything, any kind of super successful player of a general sport, they're going to be on the high end of certain aspects. And yeah, one thing is to measure, we can do a lot of things behaviorally, like similar to what we're doing in AIMLab, but also getting actual measurements of what's going on in their brain would be really, really cool too. Yeah. All right. All right, thanks everyone.